Elara screamed as the bond ignited. Pain tore through her chest like fire ripping through ice, sharp and blinding, forcing the air from her lungs. She stumbled forward beneath the silver moon, fingers digging into the fabric over her heart as heat flared beneath her skin. The courtyard erupted into chaos, wolves shouting, boots scraping stone, the night vibrating with raw instinct. The mark burned. It pulsed beneath her collarbone, alive and unmistakable. "No," Elara gasped, her knees buckling. "Please, no." She had spent her entire life skirting the edges of Frostclaw territory. Close enough to belong, distant enough to never matter. Human. Unclaimed. Invisible. She knew the stories as well as anyone. Mate bonds didn't happen to people like her. The pull slammed into her next, violent, irresistible, yanking something deep inside her toward a presence so powerful it made the air feel heavy. Her vision blurred as the bond stretched tight, demanding acknowledgement. Slowly, dread curdling in her stomach, Elara lifted her head. Alpha Riven stood at the center of the courtyard. Tall. Broad. Imposing in a way that silenced the wolves around him without effort. His dark eyes locked onto hers, shock flashing across his face as the bond surged between them like a live wire snapping into place. For one breathless second, hope bloomed. Fate had seen her. Then Riven's expression hardened. The hope was shattered. "You've got to be joking," he said coldly. The murmurs spread instantly. Disbelief. Unease. Disgust. Elara forced herself to stand, her legs trembling as every eye in the courtyard turned toward her. She felt exposed, stripped bare by the bond's glow beneath her skin. "I didn't do this," she said, her voice barely steady. "I swear." Riven stepped closer, then stopped, as if proximity alone offended him. His gaze swept over her, too small, too human, too fragile. His jaw clenched. "A human," he said aloud. "This is what fate offers me." An elder shifted uncomfortably. "Alpha, the bond." "I see the bond," Riven snapped. "That doesn't mean I accept it." The words landed like a blow. Elara's chest tightened painfully as the bond pulsed, desperate and pleading. Her body betrayed her, instinct screaming for closeness, for safety, for him. Riven felt it too. His lip curled. "She would weaken this pack," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "She would undermine my authority. I will not be mocked by rival alphas because fate decided to be cruel." Silence crashed down hard. Elara's ears rang. Shame flooded her, hot and suffocating. She wished the stone beneath her feet would crack open and swallow her whole. "I reject her," Riven said. The bond screamed. Agony ripped through Elara's chest, far worse than when it formed. It felt like something essential was being torn out of her, leaving behind a hollow ache so deep she couldn't breathe. She cried out as the connection snapped violently, the echo of it shredding her from the inside. She collapsed. Someone caught her before she hit the ground, but it didn't matter. Tears streamed down her face as the pain receded into a numb, crushing emptiness. Above her, Riven turned away. No hesitation. No regret. Just rejection. By the time Elara woke, the moon had dipped low in the sky. She lay alone in a small stone room near the edge of the territory, the air heavy with pity and avoidance. Her chest ached dully, a constant reminder of what had been ripped away. Rejected. Not just by a mate, but by destiny itself. She sat up slowly, pressing her palm over her heart. The bond was gone, but not entirely. A faint echo lingered, like a scar that refused to heal. Before dawn broke, Elara left Frostclaw. No one tried to stop her. No one followed. The pack lands faded behind her as the sun crept over the horizon, its warmth doing nothing to chase away the cold hollow inside her. She didn't look back. Years passed. The girl who had cried on Frostclaw Stone did not survive them. Elara learned quickly that survival didn't care about fate or bonds. It demanded discipline, control, silence. She built a quiet life far from pack lands, choosing isolation over rejection, independence over hope. The ache of the bond dulled, but it never vanished. Sometimes, the earth seemed to hum beneath her feet. Sometimes, plants thrived where she lingered too long. She ignored it. Humans didn't have magic. Humans endured. And Elara endured. Until the night the land shook beneath her. She was walking home when the ground trembled violently, knocking her off balance. A sharp pressure slammed into her chest, breath-stealing and familiar. The echo flared. She froze. Wolves emerged from the darkness moments later, armed, tense, unmistakably Frostclaw. The sight of their markings made something twist painfully in her chest. "Elara," one of them said. "You need to come with us." Her jaw tightened. "I don't belong to your pack." "That's not our decision," another replied uneasily. Something deep within her stirred, hot and restless. She straightened, meeting their gazes without fear. "Tell Riven," she said evenly, "that if he wants me back anywhere near his territory, he can come explain himself." The wolves exchanged uncertain looks. None of them touched her. And that unsettled them more than any scream would have. As they escorted her away, the echo in her chest pulsed again, stronger this time, insistent, as if something long buried had finally begun to wake. Far away, an alpha staggered as a presence he had never truly escaped slammed back into his senses. If this story already has you hooked, take a second to like the video, it helps more than you think. And stay with me, because what Elara becomes next will change everything. The Frostclaw Pack lands hadn't changed, but Elara had. The familiar scent of pine and earth, the heavy air filled with the scents of wolves, nothing had altered in the years she'd been away. But the difference was immediate. Every step she took, every movement, felt like an invasion, like the land itself was holding its breath. As they crossed the borders, the pack members took notice, but none approached her. The pack wolves had no right to acknowledge her, she wasn't part of their world anymore. Not after what Riven had done. They led her to the Grand Hall, a massive stone building at the heart of the territory. The double doors creaked open, and she stepped inside, eyes scanning the room as her pulse quickened. Her heart didn't race with nervousness, though. It was something else, a heightened awareness that she couldn't ignore. Riven was waiting. He stood at the head of the room, his broad figure cutting a sharp silhouette against the firelight. His eyes locked onto hers the moment she entered, and for the briefest of moments, he froze, his expression unreadable. It wasn't the anger she expected. It wasn't fear either. It was something else, something unfamiliar. He wasn't expecting her to be standing here. Not like this. The wolves in the room shifted uneasily. They could feel it too. The power had changed. Not just in the room, but in her. Elara stood taller than she remembered. There was a calm confidence to her now that Riven didn't recognize, not from the girl he had cast aside so easily years ago. "Elara," he said, his voice low and strained. "You're here." "I am," she replied, her tone steady, unaffected by the weight of his gaze. "I'm not here to beg or make excuses for what happened. I'm here because you need me." Riven's jaw tightened. "You don't belong here. Not after what you did." His words hit her like a physical blow, but Elara didn't flinch. She wasn't the same girl he had rejected. She had learned how to carry herself, how to keep her heart from cracking open every time he looked at her. She had learned that strength didn't come from what others chose for you, it came from what you chose for yourself. "I didn't choose to be rejected," she said, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. "But I choose to be here now. And you need me. Whether you like it or not." The room fell silent, the weight of her words sinking into every wolf's bones. Riven didn't respond immediately. Instead, he looked at her with that familiar mix of confusion and pride, the same mixture that had driven him to cast her aside. His gaze flickered to the mark on her neck, faint now, but still visible beneath her skin. The bond. The bond he had severed with a single word. It still pulsed between them, louder now than before. And for the first time, Riven felt the shift. The power within him had always come from his alpha status, from his pack, from the bond that connected him to his wolves. But Elara, she wasn't bound by the same rules. She wasn't part of his pack. She wasn't even part of his world. And yet, her presence here was undeniable. Something ancient stirred deep in Riven's chest as he realized the truth. The pack had not only lost her, it had lost the balance that she had brought with her. His pride had cost them more than he realized. A faint tremor ran through the ground beneath them. Elara's senses flared to life, and she knew it wasn't just her imagination. The land was responding. Her connection to it, to the earth itself, had awakened in ways she couldn't fully comprehend yet. But it was undeniable. "This is what you've been running from," she said softly, eyes locked on his. "The magic that flows beneath this land. It was never yours to control." Riven's eyes narrowed, his control slipping for a moment. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know exactly what I'm talking about," she retorted. "The balance has been broken. The land itself is calling to me, and it's not just the pack that feels it. It's everything. You can't stop it. Not now." She stepped closer, her every movement deliberate, her eyes never leaving his. The bond between them flared with a powerful force that made the air thick with tension. She felt his resistance, his desire to assert control, to make her bow to his will. But Elara stood her ground. She wasn't afraid. The earth beneath her feet trembled again, this time more violently. The wolves in the room stiffened, the air crackling with raw power. Riven growled low in his throat, his body shifting instinctively, the alpha within him screaming for dominance. But as the ground shook again, Elara held her ground. She didn't retreat. She didn't flinch. And that, more than anything, rattled Riven. He had expected her to fall, to beg, to crave his acceptance. But Elara wasn't the girl he had rejected. She was stronger than he could have imagined. "You'll regret this," he muttered, his words dripping with frustration. "No," she said quietly. "You'll regret rejecting me." The power that had once felt like a burden now surged through her, the earth beneath her feet responding to her every thought. The ground cracked open in a burst of silver light, and Elara didn't hesitate. Her hand shot out, palm facing the floor, and the earth itself obeyed. Riven staggered back, instinctively stepping away from the force that erupted from her. The wolves in the room watched, stunned, as the silver fire from the earth wrapped around Elara's body, coiling like a protective shield. The magic she controlled wasn't wolf magic. It wasn't bound to alpha blood. It was something far older. "Enough!" Riven shouted, but the words couldn't stop the surge of power that rippled through the room. The pack fell back, wolves bowing their heads, sensing the power shift. Riven himself gritted his teeth, fighting against the pull of the bond, against the overwhelming force of Elara's power. He had rejected her. He had cast her aside for fear of weakness. Now, that weakness had become his undoing. "Don't do this," he growled, but Elara didn't listen. She had no intention of bending to his will. She had learned that submission only led to pain. And she wasn't going to let him have the power he so desperately craved. Not anymore. If you're enjoying the story so far, don't forget to like this video, it helps the channel grow and ensures you don't miss the next chapter of Elara's journey. Stay tuned, because what happens next changes everything. The ground beneath them cracked open again, but this time, the force was even greater. A deep rumble echoed through the hall, shaking the walls and sending wolves scrambling to regain their balance. Elara's hands remained outstretched, her connection to the earth growing stronger by the second, as though the very land itself recognized her power. Riven staggered backward, his eyes wide with disbelief. He had always prided himself on his control, on his dominance over his pack and his world. But in this moment, control seemed a distant memory. Elara's power was something he could neither command nor understand. The wolves around them watched in stunned silence, torn between awe and fear. They had seen Riven command storms, shatter walls with his strength, but they had never seen anything like this. The land itself seemed to bend to Elara's will. "You didn't even know what you were rejecting," Elara said quietly, her voice carrying through the tension in the room. "I'm not a weakness, Riven. I'm the balance you've lost." He clenched his fists, growling as his body instinctively shifted, wolf features emerging to match his anger. "You think you can control me?" he spat, his voice laced with fury. Elara's eyes flashed, the silver light around her growing more intense. She didn't respond to his challenge with words. Instead, she drew from the earth once more, sending a pulse of energy through the floor. The walls trembled as if the very foundation of the pack hall were about to crumble. Riven fought the urge to kneel, his alpha instincts warring with the power emanating from Elara. He could feel it in his bones, the call of the earth, the weight of her power. It didn't just touch the land, it resonated with something ancient, something that made him feel small in comparison. "You think you're the only one who's been broken?" Elara continued, her voice now steady and sure. "I was rejected, cast aside. But I've learned to stand on my own. I don't need you or your pack to define me anymore." Riven's eyes narrowed as he struggled to regain his footing, both physically and emotionally. His pride, his status, everything he had built around his dominance, was slipping through his fingers. The bond that had once defined him was now a pulsing weight in his chest, unbearable and foreign. "I was wrong," Riven muttered, his voice strained. "I shouldn't have rejected you." The words were laced with regret, but they didn't carry the weight he hoped they would. They were too little, too late. Elara's gaze softened, but her power didn't waver. She did not need his apology. No need to beg him for validation. She took a slow step forward, the earth beneath her feet shifting with her movement. "I'm not here to fix what you broke," she said, her voice quieter now but no less powerful. "I'm here because I need something more than what you've offered. And so do you." Riven swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" She didn't answer him right away. Instead, she turned toward the wolves in the room, the pack that had once shunned her, that had once stood in silence as their alpha cast her aside. They were watching her now, but their fear and awe didn't matter. What mattered was that the truth was finally out in the open. "I've seen what you've all become," she said, her eyes scanning the room. "You're ruled by fear, by power that's been forced into submission. But that's not how the world works. That's not how this land works." Elara's hands lifted again, the power surging within her. The ground around them cracked, sending tendrils of silver energy spiraling outward, wrapping around the pack hall. Riven gritted his teeth, trying to resist the pull, but it was too strong. "Your pack is fractured," Elara continued. "It's weak. And it will remain that way until you learn what it means to truly lead." Her words hit harder than any physical blow. Riven's chest tightened as the realization sank in. He had failed. Not just Elara, but his entire pack. His pride had blinded him, and in doing so, he had lost everything. "I never wanted to be weak," Riven said hoarsely, looking up at Elara. "I thought rejecting you would make me stronger." Elara's gaze softened even further, but there was no sympathy in her eyes. "Strength doesn't come from rejection. It comes from understanding, from balance. You don't rule the land, Riven. You command it. But the land will never bend to force alone. It answers to something deeper." The wolves around them were beginning to stir. They could feel the shift in the air, the power that had settled over them. It wasn't just Elara's power, it was the land's, and it was not to be ignored. Riven took a shaky breath, his head dropping. The weight of Elara's words and the power surrounding them settled into his bones, reminding him of everything he had lost in his pursuit of control. "You have the power to change everything," Riven said, his voice thick with regret. "But I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to earn back what I've lost." Elara didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped closer, the ground beneath her shifting with each movement. The bond, though weakened, was still there, still undeniable. But Elara wasn't the girl who had clung to it in desperation. She was the woman who had learned that she could stand on her own, with or without it. "I'm not here to fix you," she said softly, her voice steady but firm. "I'm here to make sure you don't destroy everything else." With that, she turned her back to him, the bond pulling in a way that made the air vibrate with tension. Riven felt it too, the power, the connection, the weight of everything he had cast aside. But this time, it wasn't Elara's to claim. It was hers to control. And for the first time since he had rejected her, Riven understood, Elara wasn't just a mate he had cast aside. She was the key to everything he had lost. But whether she would ever allow him close enough to lose her again was another question entirely. If you're still watching, don't forget to like and comment below, tell me how you think Riven can prove he's changed. And make sure to subscribe, because the next chapter of Elara's journey is going to be a game changer. The room was still, heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. Riven stood in the same place, as if rooted to the spot, the full gravity of his past mistakes crashing over him. The wolves around him shifted nervously, unsure of how to react to the tension that crackled in the air. None of them had ever seen their alpha like this, unsure, vulnerable, stripped of his usual command. Elara's power still hummed in the air, the silver glow that had enveloped the room slowly fading as she took a step back, distancing herself from Riven, from everything that had once bound them. Her heart felt lighter than it had in years, but it was not because of any apology he had offered. No, it was because she had finally seen herself for what she truly was, not a liability to be discarded, not a tool to be wielded, but a force in her own right, one that couldn't be contained by rejection, by fate, or by anyone's expectations. She turned to face him again, her eyes steady, unreadable. "You were wrong, Riven. You weren't just rejecting me. You were rejecting everything that could have made you stronger. Everything that could have made your pack better." Riven's breath hitched as her words cut through him. The rawness of his mistake was now impossible to ignore. He had always believed that strength came from dominance, from forcing others to bow, to yield. But Elara's strength had never been about submission. It had always been about autonomy, about standing tall without leaning on anyone, least of all him. "I can't undo what I've done," he said, the words rough as they left his lips. His alpha voice was gone, replaced by something more human, something that felt foreign. "I can't erase the hurt I've caused. But I swear, Elara. I would do anything to make it right." Elara shook her head. "You can't make it right, not with words. Not even with promises. You don't get to choose the terms anymore, Riven." Her voice was firm, but it wasn't angry. It was calm. Detached, almost. "You rejected me. You pushed me away. And I walked away for good reason. I won't come back because you suddenly realize you made a mistake. I won't return because you need me." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle between them. The pack held its breath, watching her, waiting. "I'm not here to fix you," she said, quieter now, the truth in her voice resonating like the land beneath their feet. "I'm here because I see now that I never needed fixing. You're the one who needs to understand that." Riven clenched his fists, fighting the instinct to fall to his knees again, to grovel before her. He had rejected her once, and though his pride had caused him to do so, he had learned something in these painful moments. He wasn't the only one who had been wronged. And his pride wouldn't win back Elara. His understanding, his willingness to change, those would. But he had to prove it. The ground beneath them trembled again. The earth had not been still since Elara's return, since she had made her presence known. Her connection to the land had only grown stronger, the magic she controlled pulsing with a power that was undeniably hers. The wolves around her felt it, their gazes shifting uneasily. Riven took a step forward, his voice hoarse as he spoke. "What do you want from me, Elara?" His words were thick with regret, but there was something else, something deeper, more vulnerable. "What do you need me to do to prove I'm not the same man who cast you aside?" Elara's gaze softened just slightly, but the edge to her expression remained. She looked at him as though weighing him, truly seeing him for the first time. "You want to prove you've changed?" she asked quietly. "You have to let go of your pride, Riven. You have to stop pretending that you can control everything, everyone. Start with that." She took a deep breath. "And then, maybe, just maybe, you'll start to understand what it means to lead with balance, not force." For a long moment, Riven didn't speak. He simply stood there, watching her, his chest rising and falling with every breath. Then, slowly, he nodded. "I will," he said, his voice quieter now. "I'll learn. I promise." Elara studied him for a moment longer before she turned her back to him, the bond tugging at her chest once more. But this time, she didn't flinch. She had nothing to prove. She did not need to bend to him. And that was something she had earned through her own strength. The wolves in the room remained silent, still watching as the Alpha stood in quiet reflection. Riven's gaze followed Elara, his heart heavy with regret and determination. He didn't know if he could ever fully redeem himself, but he understood now that redemption wasn't something she owed him. It was something he had to earn, through actions, through change, and through his willingness to let her be free. "You'll never have control over me again," Elara said, her voice carrying through the room. She didn't look back, but the words hung in the air like a challenge. "But I'm not here to destroy you, Riven. I'm here to make sure that what you've broken doesn't break everyone else." With that, she walked away, the ground beneath her shifting with every step. Her power was undeniable now, her presence undeniable. But she was no longer bound to anyone or anything. She had freed herself. Riven watched her go, a sense of loss washing over him. But there was something else, something stronger. A glimmer of hope. Because for the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to be truly humbled. And if Elara would ever allow him back into her life, he would prove, every day, that he was worthy of her. As Elara disappeared into the distance, Riven stood alone in the center of the room, the weight of his past mistakes heavy on his shoulders. The wolves around him were silent, waiting for him to speak, to say something that would return order to the pack. But Riven knew it wasn't words that mattered anymore. It was actions. And those, he would have to prove in time. If you've enjoyed this journey, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. This is only the beginning of Elara's story. We're just scratching the surface of what's to come. Stay tuned for more, because things are about to get even more intense.